My name is Jessica Viato. I'm a business banker and a vice president for PNC Bank. I wanted to start by thanking Fox Rothschild for sponsoring Katherine's appearance today. And she is my friend. And I'm going to put that out in public because my husband will tell you he was her friend first. Let me tell you a little bit about Katherine. She's the founder and president of the O'Hara Project, a Morristown company that combines the power of marketing, digital PR, the power of marketing, digital PR, and social media to connect brands with customers. Katherine has built brands for Fortune 500 companies and won more than 200 awards. I didn't know that. For her work on behalf of national and global clients. So it is my pleasure to give a warm welcome to Katherine O'Hara.
And she makes the best spaghetti sauce you've ever had in your entire life. I'm just going to throw that out there. All right. You know it's true. You know it's true. You know it's true. Oh, everybody went back. Oh my goodness, we're bumping ahead. Shh, no one look, no one look. All right. So again, Katherine O'Hara of the O'Hara Project. We'll start off by, I'll share a bit about myself and what we do at the O'Hara Project, and then we'll take it into branding product you. We are an integrated marketing firm located in Morristown, New Jersey. We do both B2B and B2C efforts. We are WBNC certified, if anyone's familiar with that. And we're also MBE certified because I'm a Cubana incognito. Both my parents are from Cuba. So I was joking earlier that people were like, oh, are you with the Newark O'Haras? And I'm like, no, I'm with the Santa Clara O'Haras. And then for those clients, we do internal and external initiatives, which I'm going to explain in a second. The following snapshot is just a taste of some of the brands we've been so lucky to work with. Usually use brands, personality entities like single person entities don't necessarily resonate in terms of jumping off a screen, but we do everything from PR to a cookie couture client out of New York City, who Stella McCartney is one of her biggest clients, to a little company called Arm & Hammer that people may have heard of. And when I'm saying we do both internal and consumer-facing initiatives, you'll see kind of the roster of things you would typically expect from a marketing firm. From an internal standpoint, internal communications, which typically falls under a PR arm, and something that we have been so fortunate to get into in the last 3 years is something called ideation. So if people aren't familiar with what ideation means, for example, we do a lot of ideation work for Arm & Hammer, Trojan Condoms, and Vitafusion. And it's taking a look at their current product portfolio, taking a look at competitive portfolio, looking at market trends, and helping them ideate or concept products that they should bring to market within the next 3 to 10 years, and identifying perhaps what technology might be needed to achieve it. So we get to be like little inventors, which is pretty cool, right? But today we're here to talk about how to brand product you, which in the world of marketing and branding is the hardest assignment. So for anyone sitting here who has been struggling with the assignment, know that I personally even struggle with the assignment. It's like doing a self-portrait in an art class. It's the hardest thing in the world. And I have a little example I can share later of how I forced myself to rebrand product me a couple months ago, and it's been like awesome. But before we do that, let's peel back that onion. So how do we brand product you? Let's first start with asking what on earth is even a brand, right? And the misperceptions of what a brand truly is. So a brand is not a logo, right? It's not brand guidelines or CI, as some organizations call it. It isn't the product that you're doing or selling, and it isn't the service that you're selling. So what is it? See how I do this? Storyline, right? It's that weird butterfly feeling that you get, that whether you can validate it with research or you just have to have it. It's that emotional or sentiment that motivates you to either buy the product or use the service. And what really bubbles up that sentiment is the holy grail of having achieved what's called a charismatic brand. So there's no substitute. People just have to work with you. When you've achieved that, life is great, right? And to achieve that, we're going to get into a couple points during this presentation of what I know is the differentiator for the O'Hara project. This is all psychology, people. This isn't about should I do a direct mail piece or should I do an email campaign. It's about psychology and understanding that everyone has a strategic and creative side to their brain, and the different facets of what makes up a strategic and creative side of someone's thinking, and being able to find the right harmony in both is when you've really created a charismatic brand. Because as much as you can give someone a product sheet and it makes sense as to why they should do this, but they just still gravitate over here. So an example I give on this one is Domino Sugar. Forget that. Morton Salt, right? Morton Salt, it's quality, it's heritage. Like, we're kind of thinking like on that creative, that emotional brand. It's salt, people. Salt is salt. Like, if you stop and think about it, you just got had. It's salt. There's nothing different with A&P salt and Morton Salt, but you believe in your heart, that umbrella, that package, you have to have it. They have a charismatic brand, right? So a brand needs to be distinctive, appropriate, relatable, likable, ownable, and authentic. And that last word is the linchpin. If you're not being authentic, just forget about this. Forget about the road you're going down, the messaging you're trying to put out there. If it's not authentic, we are a very savvy consumer. We can read through that instantly. So it's great to speak to this stuff in a Intro to Marketing 101 capacity, but let's really like put this idea into a test drive. So I'm going to ask, who knows what a car is? Right? But it's a vehicle, typically has 4 wheels, people sit in it, and it goes from point A to point B. So we know we need to buy a car. Car is salt, right? What's a car? Technically, but it isn't now, is it? We're talking about a vehicle that takes people from point A to point B. And the other exercise I do is, who knows what a hamburger is, right? But if I say McDonald's, Wendy's, White Castle, Smash Burger, we're still talking about a piece of meat between 2 pieces of bread. It's a different thing, right? So if we can just kind of go around the room. If I say Honda, what do you think? Reliable, dependable. Resell, that is a good one. That is very good. You know your cars. You know your cars. Kia. Inexpensive. Audi. Luxury, speed, zippy, sexy, right? If I say Volvo. Soccer, safety. The first word that I probably heard, I would say 90% of the room said safety, right? So let's focus on Volvo for a second. There's a reason why I said safety. It's branding, right? So what you probably don't know, because this is a long time ago, and I'm a car nut. I could tell a car by its taillights before I could read. True story. Volvo was the first car manufacturer to introduce the 3-point seatbelt system in 1959 in its cars. They own it. It's authentic. They are safe, right? But they didn't stop there. They have spent millions and millions of dollars to tell you Volvo equals safety, right? Because they created a brand that is distinctive, it's appropriate, it's reliable, it's likable, it's ownable, and it's authentic. Who is ranked as the safest car in 2016 on that list? Number 1's the Audi A4. Number 2 is the Honda Odyssey. Number 3 is the Kia Sorento. Number 9 is the Volvo XC90. But who owns safety? It's still a safe car, let's be honest. Number 9, it's still a safe car. However, they're number 9. And the first word everyone says when they think of Volvo is safety. They own it. They were first to market to say it. They found that word that speaks to the strategic and the creative side. And the strategic side is, safety, the mathematics of it. If I get into a car crash, I know there's going to be an airbag, whatever. And the emotional, my kids are safe in a Volvo. right? So that's what we're talking about. Remember, we're talking about a car. So what do we need to do? We need to make sure our message is different and we tell a story that resonates and that we remain authentic. Can't stress that enough. And if anyone has identified millennial marketing as part of their campaigns, authentic will make you or break you. So every agency has a process, and some of them have really fancy trademark terms for it. It's basically like baking a cake, right? You're gonna explore, you're gonna see what your competitive space is doing, you're gonna see what market trends are, you're going to focus, you're gonna hone in, see what makes you different, see what the need truly is, right? You're gonna ideate, now you're gonna develop communications and processes that address that need that you have identified, and then you're gonna put it into market. And if you walk away, you failed, because you need to test, and you need to evolve. Just like we said the Volvo example, their safety, right? They're speaking to very different markets. They're selling trucks, and they're selling family vehicles. So they're putting messaging into market, and I guarantee that same message doesn't work 100% the same way if they kept it the same. So they stay authentic and true, and they just turn that dial, and they evolve as needed. So you need to do that as a brand as well. And this is up there to illustrate that this process really is not different if you own your own company or you work for a company. So either way, you are a fish in a pond. So you're still going to look against who your competitive set, whether it's the people sitting around you or the people outside of you. And I'm going to suggest that I truly believe if you're doing it internally, it's actually easier because you know who you're sitting around. When it's external, you can go to websites, you can try and figure out someone's new business presentation that they left on a table, but you have to do a little bit more recon to really figure it out. Internally, you already know the rules you have to play by, you know who you're playing against. So to figure out what your differentiator is a bit easier. Doesn't mean it's not hard, it's just easier. So one of the many tools people use to do this is what's called the SWOT analysis. Have people heard about SWOT analysis? So we have a piece of paper for everyone, and I'm going to ask everyone to kind of go along and do it with me, just so ideas are fresh, and then we're going to turn it over and do another exercise that came up with the other group. That's super fun. I think I've actually done with Jessica, so she can do it again. You know exactly what I'm going to do. So a SWOT analysis is a process where you work to identify your strengths, your opportunities, your weaknesses, or I didn't spell SWOT. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the point of it is that you're going to elevate your strengths. You're going to try and minimize your weaknesses. And if you already know about the threats that are out there and the opportunities, you can now be proactive versus reactive with it. Pretty simple, right? So the way the questions are set up is, for the sake of today's discussion, is to really identify on you. So they're very personal based, not necessarily company based, but it obviously works the same way. And the hope is when you run through this process, you're going to find those words, those moments that really truly make you distinctive, appropriate, relatable, likable, ownable, and authentic. So we're going to run through this, and just to expand on that a bit, if people have seen The Beautiful Mind, the movie, Beautiful Mind, when you go through this exercise, do yourself the benefit of doing it yourself, having people around you do it for you, with you as the product. They're going to use very different words than you're going to use. And if done correctly, you all should have a beautiful mind moment. And you should see words that keep bubbling up, and there's going to be aha moments of like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize people see that as my strength. Oh my gosh, I didn't even recognize that was a weakness that I had. And so don't just do it in a silo. Give yourself the benefit of a personal focus group and have other people help out. So for this part, forgive the frog in my throat, we're going to run through, I'll just run through questions to kind of probe yourself with, and you can just write or whatever. So for strengths, we're going to say, what advantages do you have that others don't have? So for example, this would be skills, certification, education, connections. What do you do better than anyone else? What unique resources can you draw on? And what do other people, such as your boss in particular, see as your strengths? Which of your achievements are you most proud of? What values do you believe in that others fail to exhibit? And strengths was kind of up there in a different way, but what do you see as your strengths? But especially what values do you believe in that others fail to demonstrate or exhibit? This is where that's a great authenticity word. Right? Let's do weaknesses for a second. So what tasks do you usually avoid because you don't feel confident in doing them? What will the people around you see as your weaknesses? Are you completely confident in your education and skills training? What are your negative work habits? For example, you're often late, you're a little disorganized, you have a short temper, you're poor at handling stress. Do you have personality traits that hold you back in your field? Such as public speaking. I've had to work on that one. And what do others potentially see as your weakness? Opportunities. What are technologies that can help you? Is your industry growing? Is your business growing? Is your department growing? Do you have a network of contacts to help you and offer good advice? Cannot stress the importance of having a circle of trust. What trends, management or otherwise, do you see in your company, and how can you take advantage of them? Are any of your competitors failing to do something important, and how can you take advantage of those missteps? Is there a need in your company or industry that no one is filling? And do your customers or vendors have company complaints? And if so, how can you create an opportunity by offering a solution? Hold. Writing. Okay. Now, threats. What obstacles do you currently face at work? Are any of your colleagues competing for your projects or roles? Or with you for those? Is your job or the demand for the things you do changing? Does changing technology threaten your position or company? Is there a new competitor that's getting traction in your arena? And when you really stop and think about this, can any of your weaknesses actually lead to a threat? So it's a lot to think about. It's a lot of homework, and we're not necessarily going to solve it right this second. But again, the point is by asking obviously the hard questions, and they should be hard questions, you should be able to get the word cloud. Getting the other people to answer it should get the word cloud. And then there's a part 2 to this. So let's fast forward, you figured it out. You think you have your messaging. You know it. You know what you have to put out there. If it would be a disservice to say by doing a SWOT analysis, you now have the secret weapon, you're going to go out there, you're going to nail it every single time without going back to the fact that what we do in terms of messaging is psychology. We are a brain speaking to another brain, and how that brain perceives us is whether or not you achieve that yummy emotional moment that makes you the must-have resource, right? So everyone turns their paper over. And this next exercise, the first word I'm going to use, it is not politically I came up with this long before this political process, so forgive the first word. You're going to draw a quadrant. And in the upper left, you're going to write Donald Trump. Say, In the upper right, you're going to write Oprah Winfrey. In the bottom left, you're going to write Albert Einstein. And in the bottom right, you're going to write Al Roker. So the point of this exercise is you've got yourself all figured out, right? These are the four quadrants of personality. People have been taught it in very different ways. This is a modification of a way I was taught. I'm very visual, people focused, and if I can have that as an example, it is so darn easy. So hopefully it's easy for you. So here's kind of the rules behind the quadrants of personality. Most people are a very different quadrant in their personal life than they are in their professional life. You can actually be a little bit of a merge of quadrants, but you'll definitely have a hierarchy of the quadrant you live in. So if you hear that, that kind of makes sense. But the people you're dealing with in life are a quadrant of that personality. And the psychology behind it is a very large reason for misunderstanding or conflict is that people tend to always speak to someone coming from their quadrant and never pause to think about what quadrant they're sitting in. And if you learn to take the same authentic information that you just came up with in your SWOT analysis, and the way I visualize it, because I do everything visual, is think of all of the hierarchy of messaging that you want to get out there, like a lasagna, right? It's like layers. Depending on the quadrant you're speaking to, the noodle may not go on top. You may have to put some cheese on the top. And learning to speak to people in their quadrant, I promise you, is a game changer. There isn't a single presentation my firm puts out that looks exactly the same. The content's all the same, but I write every single proposal based off of the quadrant of personality that the person on that other end of the phone or that email was. And I can tell by an email instantly what quadrant they're in. And usually if you get really good, they say within 30 seconds. In fairness, I probably need a minute to know what quadrant someone's in. And the rest of my dealings with that person, I'll be in their quadrant. And you're not being authentic. I'm still delivering the same message. I still have the same promise. I still have the same product. I'm just being cognizant that to connect and get that yummy emotional moment, I need to relate to people in the space they live in and understand their psychology. For example, one of the many, so obviously I'm talking a lot about psychology. This is a core SWOT differentiator for the O'Hara Project. Everything we do is psychology based. The way I say it, and other agencies are going to walk in there, are going to have that medical bag, and they're going to have these products, and they're going to take out a little direct mail piece and work on that with you, and a little collateral piece. We should all be able to do that. The sweet spot is getting the psychology of who we're trying to talk to, and that emotional yummy point. And let's say millennial marketing, and everyone's like, oh, I want to target millennials, right? I want to target millennials. We personally have identified 27 subsections of millennials, 27 different psychologies of millennials. So which millennial is the question? And it's not that you have to pick one of the 27. Let's talk about what makes you authentic. What are truly those attributes about your product or service? What is the largest slice of that 27 subset category? Because that's where you're authentic. Speak to them. Don't just speak to millennials. And where that comes from, and I'll stop for a second because I can do this for hours, right? So I'm Gen X. I just aged myself, right? So Gen Xers, if you peel back the psychology of what makes a Gen Xer the consumer that they are, everything starts when we're young. So Gen Xers are the first latchkey kids, first latchkey generation. We had to learn super early to think independently, be on our own, open that fridge, know how to make a peanut butter and jelly. I personally took Doritos and threw a bunch of cheese on it, popped it into the microwave, which is why I have to work out. But you learn to be independent, right? So as an audience, if you want to communicate to a Gen Xer, you need to speak to them as individuals. Don't talk about groups. We work out, the way we work out, gyms, headphones, treadmill, do not speak to me, right? We don't like groups. We don't like groups. Millennials are the technology generation, the first technology generation, and instant gratification generation. Like, you know, we watched Happy Days, and you had to wait till next week for Happy Days to come on again, right? And now you're on Netflix and whatever, and everything's easy. And like, and you hear it even in the office, Zappos, it's gonna be here in 2 days. Are you kidding me? That is not acceptable, right? But because of that, they crave human interaction. They're the social good generation, right? They want to feel like they're connecting, like they're making a difference. They actually make appointments to go grocery shopping together. Think about that. Like, I need to get in and out as fast as I can. Everything's like group sessions. Why there's color runs. A color run would have never worked back in the day. That's why Uber can live today. Uber, 15 years ago, if you told a Gen Xer and a Boomer, let me tell you what you're gonna do. You're gonna grab your phone, and some stranger is gonna show up in a car, and you're gonna be fine. Just make sure that no one sawed off the handles inside before you get in. But you're gonna be fine, and they're gonna take you somewhere, and they somehow have your credit card information, and they're gonna charge. We would have never gone for that. But it's millennial. It's instant gratification. All digital. There's no thought. There's one of the subsections is called keeping up. They have from 12:01 to 11:59 p.m. figured out of what they're going to do, and anything that can slice them 15 minutes more or give them kind of an access to a capability that's faster and quicker. I don't care if they're sawed off handles. Some guy's going to pull up in a car and I'm going to get there. That's why Uber works today. It's not just because it was a great technology. It's something that truly speaks to a psychology of consumer that resonates today. We get that, right? So we're going to go through this. We're going to figure out psychology. So Donald Trump. So I'm going to give you a Donald Trump example. Donald Trump is, you're wasting the very oxygen in this room by standing here. Do not give me the problem. Only give me the solution. Think about anyone you deal with professionally or personally, that's that personality. We all know them, right? Oprah Winfrey. She wants to know the problem, but she'd love to hear the journey of how it got you there, right? So they like to understand the steps that took you there, and that's where there's comfort in validating the product or service, or it's what helps create that yummy emotional connection, right? Albert Einstein is so I hear you, but what percentage of people are more inclined to click on a blue button than a green button? All fact-based. Everything's fact-based. So when you do a presentation to an Einstein, you got a lot of bullet points, lots of statistics, and if you can't validate an ROI in a very upfront way, you're going to lose an Einstein. And Al Rokers, admittedly, are the toughest because they're kind of a social butterfly. Like, hey, how you doing? Oh my gosh, did you get your hair cut? That's so great. I know we're here to talk about the brochure, but oh my God, have your kids playing softball right now? That's so nice. We all know them, and they're like shiny thing, a little bit on an Al Roker. So the Al Roker, you ask how the cat's feeling in the email, right? That Trump would be done with you if you asked how the cat's feeling. But you see, we're talking the same product, the same service. So here's an example. Every single person in my office, when they get hired, are taught the 4 quadrants of personality. And when we do a Monday morning status meeting, and we talk about projects, and obviously there's going to be some conflicts that arise. And the first question will be, well, what quadrant are they? And they're like, it was a Trump. So I open the email, and the rule is, and they know if they break the rule, I'm not going to be happy. If you write a letter to a Trump, an email to a Trump, before you hit that send button, don't put the name in first so you don't accidentally hit it, right? Hold your hand up to the screen and make a letter C. If the email is bigger than a letter C, start deleting. I cannot stress that trick to you enough. It's a lot of blah, blah, blah. The moment's bigger than a C. Like, you're still going to say the same thing, but you might say, this is to confirm receipt. We're good to go for our 2:30 call. Talk to you then. Oh, that was pretty good. That's a Trump. And an Oprah is, hey, hope you had a nice weekend. Wanted to let you know that we got you see how now it's different? Broker, you're going to ask about the cat. But if you go through those 4 quadrants and really think about, now you went through that SWOT analysis, you found those yummy word cloud moments of what's going to make you different, what's going to resonate, and how does that same word cloud look against those 4 quadrants? I promise you the hierarchy is going to be different. the form of delivery is going to be different. You're going to write it differently. We just did a presentation for an experiential marketing campaign, which is like pop-ups, from brands, kind of those consumer brand experiences. And the end client, what's tough is like, obviously when you're presenting to a room, that's another exercise. When you're presenting to a room, if I have a great relationship with a client, I'll teach them the 4 quadrants of personality because they're my ally, right? So I say, dissect the room for me, what percentage of each? She's like, all right, I think so. There's 6 people there. I think there's 2 Trumps and there's 1. And she'll break it down. And I write the presentation or the PowerPoint to address my 60%, 30%, 10%. So everyone walked out of that room feeling that their quadrant was spoken to. And the hierarchy of it's going to be different. Does that make sense?
What if you don't know everybody who's going to be in the presentation?
Gut. Then it starts doing gut. So some of it's industry based. So some industries are going to be more Trump Einstein focused, while marketing, let's say a marketing firm will probably be more Oprah-esque, and a technology firm is going to be more Einstein Trump for the most part. Anyone have any questions based on that? So now, again, I can't stress enough the problem with teaching this exercise, or the danger of teaching this exercise that I've had, is that I want to stress to people, I am not advocating anyone being fake. Do not be fake. You can go through this exercise and be true to who you are. You are also just being true to the end recipient. And that's all this exercise is asking, for you to maybe get out of your quadrant for a little bit and think about how they think, and for you to truly connect and truly resonate product you. It's not just going through the exercise of what makes me different, it's what makes them passionate. Everyone get that? Oh, we screamed through this one in this group. Are there any questions? With the last group, and please don't be hesitant, a lot of people brought up individual circumstances they have. So I gave an example of a client that, actually no, who here is a member of WPO? Anyone here member? WPO? So WPO group, you get how it works. So basically it's like an external advisory board of kind of like-minded businesswomen that represent a bunch of different professions. And you can come to the table with challenges, and you're just inundated with these wonderful aha moments of how people from different industries would think to solve the same situation. And you're able to walk away with really actionable information. So if anyone's craving that, little plug for the WPO. You heard me do it, that's great. But there was I was asked to present the 4 quadrants of personality to our WPO group. And we went around the table and everyone presented an example of either client or internal employee or colleague situation, and asked me to help identify what quadrant they were. Again, super easy, super fast to do, and gave a resolution. And this one woman stood up and she talked about this guy that she didn't call him a Trump, but she talked about how she sweats when the phone rings. Like, come on. Like, that was like the first tip off. She sweats when the phone rings. He cuts her off. She doesn't let her finish her sentences. And she was living in a very, he doesn't respect me because I'm a woman, so he's shutting me up moment. So I said, all right, he's a Trump. So here are a couple tricks. The first thing you need to tell him is, I hear you. Trumps want to be heard. It's not male or female. Trumps just want to know they were heard. So always say, I hear you, and keep it short. Don't try and defend. Keep it short. So while we're sitting there doing this, her phone rang, and it was the Trump. And you saw her go. I'm like, you go do it. You pick up that phone, and you're gonna Trump him. And she went out in the hallway, and she came back like 2 minutes later. She was like, that was the best phone call I've ever had with him. She was like, this is amazing. But like, and it was this amazing, refreshing aha moment of, she stayed true to who she was. She didn't just bow down to him. She said she heard him. The moment she said she heard him, he felt validated. And she gave him a solution. She didn't drag on about the problem. I hear you. This is the next step I'm going to take. I'm currently in a meeting, but I will call you back in 2 hours, and I'll have that answer for you then. It's done. It was done. It wasn't this volleyball game that tends to happen with Trumps when other quadrants start talking. So I got the 10-minute mark, so we can open up to Q&A. Any questions? And I see a hand. Love it. Go.
Hi, Jennifer Adams, Fidelity Investments. Do you think your brand changes as you change roles in an organization?
Good question. So you're working within an organization. Your brand evolves. I don't know if it necessarily changes. So if you go to the Volvo examples, they stayed about safety, but they evolved as they entered new markets. Nike's still Nike, but now they do watches and sneakers and shirts, but they're still Nike. So it's about staying authentic to you and understanding how your brand performs and delivers now in that market, right?
Interesting. As I listened to your last part of the conversation about the Trump, about Trump versus Oprah versus Al versus Einstein, I have a vice president who actually, now that I'm thinking about it, is absolutely a Trump without a question. Except sometimes I want to relate to him and be able to communicate, and I can be an Oprah, or I could be, Al Roker. Now I'm realizing that he doesn't want me to be that when I want, but only when he decides he's changed from a Trump to an Al Roker. So now I have to,
But listen, just listen.
I just learned that I get confused because there are days I go in to talk to him. I start off with, so how were the kids this weekend? I don't even, he's the vice president, I'm the president, he don't even want to hear it. Then there are days that I walk in and I go, so look it, we have to go over our the G&A and all of this, and he looks at the clock, he talks, but he wants me to use 3 words or less and that's it. I just learned something very valuable here today, just on that, besides.
Thank you.
I need your business card.
Oh, thank you. No, so example on that, I was at a client meeting, and another colleague ran into the room and didn't know I was there, and she was honestly in tears, to be honest with you. And she like shaking, and she's like, I don't know what to do, I need you to read this email. And it was an email exchange with her boss, and he just hit every nerve point on her. And I said, do you want me to step outside? And my client is one of the clients that knows the quadrant. She was like, no, you need to stay here. You need to tell her. I'm like, all right, here's the 4 quadrants of personality, blah, blah, blah. Give me the email. So she gives me the email. And I didn't even have to read it. At first, I was like, is this top secret? Like, do I really share with people? Instantly, he wrote, working from home, can this wait? Trump. It wasn't even more than a line. She wrote, yeah, it can, but we have a meeting tomorrow morning. But her response was enormous. I'm like, oh my gosh, shh, shh. That was the best thing that ever happened with social media is the gift of Twitter, because it teaches you how to write in 140 characters or less. If it could be a tweet, that's how you're going to write to a Trump, right? So I said, so it was the last exchange he had, and I said, this is what you're going to reply. Just write back, I hear you. How does 2:30 work for a time to meet? And he wrote back, oh, that's okay. Could we maybe make it 3 o'clock because I have to bring my kid? He totally went to Rokerland. This guy who was so mean to her the whole time. Let them come into your quadrant. Always start in their quadrant. Anyone? Here. Go, boom, boom.
So I did marketing for about 18 years, and I recently transitioned into a sales role this past May. So I'm in the technology field. I'm not a technical person at all. I have a good team behind me. My engineers, they're awesome. But I'm definitely a social seller, 100%. Definitely probably the Oprah person, as you could tell as I'm telling this story. So I have post-traumatic stress from my very first sales call ever. Because they sent me in alone with a C-level person from a very big insurance company. And he was a Trump, and he just drilled me with questions, and he was hardcore, and I wanted to puke when I left. It was so bad. And then I walk into other meetings, and these people are so social and so easy for me to relate to. I guess it's hard to anticipate those first meetings without actually knowing how to prepare. Like, it's difficult.
Did you get any emails from that person before the
Yeah,
meeting?
so I kind of now, yes, we did have emails.
Email is the easiest.
'Cause there was
isn't
coordinating
a
it.
question in my mind when I read an email of who I'm presenting to. I don't even have to meet the person. If I can get at least 2 emails from that person, I already know what quadrant they are. And I'm going into that meeting already prepared. The other gift you have, LinkedIn. Look at how they write their LinkedIn profile. There are so many things out there that you can recon. I could be the Pink Panther in another life. Like, recon. Go to LinkedIn and you'll immediately know what quadrant they are. And people who bullet point their LinkedIn are clearly on the left side of the page. And what they bullet, if there's a lot of numbers and percentage signs, they're definitely an Einstein, right? But if their bullet points are, they're a Trump.
Yeah.
Like, it's so easy to know before you walk into a meeting.
All right, that's helpful because that's my fear now. Sometimes I
Always go to, I never, and then I go from LinkedIn and then I go and see if I can find them on Twitter. How do they tweet? Do they tweet in all caps? Silly things, it's true. Do they tweet in all caps? Do they use 15 exclamation points? Are they smiley faces, emojis? Right? It's
much happier.
You can find out about anyone you want to talk to before you walk in a room. It's the benefit and the curse of social media.
Good morning. I'm Christine O'Brien. I'm the president of the Insurance Council of New Jersey. Let's turn this around. So we're talking about the audience, but what advice would you have for somebody who has a sense of their brand, but for whatever reason now it gets tarnished? Maybe it's a first impression, right? So maybe now she goes back and she meets that CEO and he thinks, oh, here comes that saleswoman again, right? How can you, and without having lied, right, having done anything egregious, but now you're setting the stage for yourself. You think you present a certain brand, and yet now you're also, as you hopefully will be aware of now, it's not quite how I wanted it to go. How do people come back, and women particularly, vacillate all the time with their own, one, self-evaluation, and then 2, how they present it? What if you walk into a situation and you realize, I have some damage control I now need to do? What's the best way to really sort of, what inventory can you take to bounce back and own that again?
Well, the thing, first chance like a first impression? My parents are from Cuba, so I'm really bad at American expression. There you go, second chance,
I know,
that thing. But if you ask me about the turtle with a butterfly, I can tell you about that one, right? But it's tough, right? Because it was the first impression. So at least you know moving forward, you met them, you're never making that mistake again. So you're going to keep talking to them now in their quadrant, and some of them will slowly sway. If I have someone on my team that the moment I have a Trump on my team, a salesperson who's a Trump, and the moment I have a Trump, she's now going to go into the lead. Professionally, I'm an Oprah Einstein. Personally, I'm crazy Roker. I'm crazy Roker.
So that's interesting.
Right?
So you're coming at it from, so I would just say for the room, most people, most women, I think, would be like, oh my God, what do I have to do? What do I have to do?
No, you can't always be the cure.
You're saying reevaluate the person or the audience.
And accept the realities that sometimes, you know what, it stinks. You can't fix it. And the example I gave the last group, I worked on a project for Seiko watches. Everyone's familiar with Seiko watches. In the US, they're the $250 watch you can buy at Macy's, right? In Japan, they're a $5,000 to $10,000 watch. That's the state-of-art technology. You want that on your wrist like you want a Cartier. They wanted to launch a $5,000 kinetic watch in the US, and we told them, you're nuts. It will never sell. But why not? It's doing great in Japan. It's going to do well here. You've spent millions and millions of dollars over decades to be the $250 watch at Macy's. That's the Titanic. You know how long it's going to turn that ship to turn around? Sometimes you can't fix it. And as much as they want to, there's so many examples there. Like, so Hyundai comes to market, right? Great car. Everyone knows the price point. You know, for about $20,000 car, you're going to get that point A to point B. You're going to do it great. They came out with the Genesis. Are you nuts? $60,000 for a Hyundai? It's probably a great car. They're the $20,000 reliable car. You can't go up. You can't change that perception. Vera Wang at Kohl's works because Vera Wang was Vera Wang. And everyone accepts they're maybe not getting the same, but if she didn't start as Vera Wang, she would never have come up from Kohl's.
So I appreciate that. I appreciate that the second opportunity to sort of rebrand yourself is understanding the scenario in which you first did it and
Yes.
who that audience is.
Yes.
And then if you better understand who they were and what you did in that circumstance,
The thing is, try
can
again,
right,
and you can try yourself.
again, right.
You can bring in assistance.
it's not necessarily you.
It's not
though.
all on you. It's never all on you. Anyone? I think we might have to. It's time. It's time. I guess it's lunch, right?